a very good morning to you. You're listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. I'm John Weeks, your host, and it's a beautiful day out there, so I'm looking forward to the day's show. Of course, I've got Peter Watts in the studio with me as well. Peter, how are you?
I am well, John. It's good to be in the studio again with you. Good morning to you. Good morning to the listeners. And, we've got a good topic in front of us this morning, but we're also considering what's been happening in the world.
It's been a very interesting times. Last Sunday, very tragic indeed, in Sydney and Bondi Beach. And I think, this incident's going to change the political platform, but also people's minds, the way we look at life these days, particularly in Australia.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's affected a lot of people in so many different ways.
Well, I know that, you might want to share, John, your connection to that event, because obviously people have been watching the news and the tragic consequences of the gunmen's action and the aftermath of all of that, and grief is turning to anger, and then we know that, as you say, I'm sure this will produce changes and shifts in the way people think. But tell us how you're connected to all of that.
Well, what happened when all this was happening, my daughter, who was working at the Bondi Beach Pavilion, she works at the outdoor cinema, which is very, very close to where the incident occurred. And there was patrons moving into this cinema and outdoor cinema, and all of a sudden they all heard lots of banging, lots of shooting, sort of sound. People thought it was firecrackers or whatever. And then the reality kicked in and they said, no, it's shooting. It's a massive shooting. And I think there were 50, 60 rounds of shooting. And immediately my daughter, who was acting as a manager on the day, was able to get most of the people out of the cinema and and move the other to the total direction, the opposite direction. Some of the staff members and people in there were trying to hide themselves in cupboards and whatever, fearing for their lives. So thankfully she was able to get them out.
But your daughter is okay?
She was okay. I got a text message, an audio message on Messenger saying, Dad, there's a shooting in Sydney, massive. But I'm okay. And you can hear her running, you can hear her running. And so you think, that is so close to home in as far as a family situation goes. And then I turned it on the news and whatever, and I thought, wow.
How big an event it was.
It was.
Well, you can appreciate, and our thoughts and prayers obviously are with the family members of those who have been killed, and also with those who are currently receiving treatment for injuries that they sustained. And, we just hope and pray that through all of this, people can see that there is a better way forward. And we know that these events can reshape the direction of politics and policy and all of those kinds of things. And it'll be interesting to see how that contributes to the biblical understanding, especially as we approach end times, for instance. And we've said before that for decades, the Western world has moved towards the left, and we can start to see it move towards the right, and these kind of events can end up moving the pendulum more towards the right, which is more likely the way that the prophecies in the Bible will ultimately be fulfilled. But tragic scenes in Bondi, and we wish those who are recovering well, and our hearts and our prayers are with those who are grieving at this time.
Indeed.
Today, John, we are completing a series that we have been broadcasting on Faith FM called The Sanctuary Under Investigation. This is part 8 of the 8-part series. If you are listening in today and maybe you haven't heard the series, or maybe you've only heard 1 or 2, you can go to the Faith FM website, and if you look at all the programs there, you look at A Light in the Dark, and you should find these episodes of the series, The Sanctuary Under Investigation. This is the final one. It's called What on Earth Happened? And let me just briefly go back over the things that we've looked at so far, John. So we did an overview of the earthly sanctuary that God instructed Moses to build in the wilderness after they left Egypt. We asked the question, is judgment biblical? And we were particularly asking, is a pre-Advent investigative judgment biblical? And we looked at some of the biblical evidence for that. Then we asked the question, where did Jesus go when he ascended to heaven? And we talked about him dedicating, inaugurating, consecrating, anointing the sanctuary, the whole sanctuary, before beginning his work there as mediator. Then we looked at Daniel chapter 7, a judgment in your favour. Daniel chapter 8, how long will the vision be? The 2300 days. Daniel chapter 9, understanding the vision and finding the starting point for that 2,300-day period. And then last week we looked at the Day of Atonement and what happened in the earthly sanctuary in terms of the most holy place. We then looked at what Jesus was doing in the heavenly sanctuary in that context. And today what we want to look at is if it's true, and it is because we looked at that evidence in the first 7 episodes, that on October 22, 1844, those 2,300 days came to an end and the sanctuary began to be cleansed. We talked about what happened in heaven last week, and today we want to talk about what on earth happened. What on earth happened? Did anything happen here on earth? What was happening on earth at that time?
A lot.
Well, all sorts of things, but let's have a look at that. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into Revelation chapter 12 to begin with. Mm-hmm. And in Revelation chapter 12, we could spend all day in this chapter, but we won't. Because there's much to cover. But in Revelation chapter 12, you have really the history of the great controversy between Christ and Satan played out between God's people, which is depicted as a woman, the child that would ultimately come from God's people, which is Jesus, and then the dragon, which is the devil, who is there to oppose him and try to defeat him and try to prevent him from carrying out his mission. And so this really is a conflict between Christ and Satan. Christ is the child, Satan is the dragon. And so it depicts it there. So I'm going to get you to read, John, if you could read the first 3 verses, and then I'll read 4, 5, and 6.
Of
chapter 12.
Oh, okay.
Revelation 12, 1 to 3.
Okay. Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. Then being with child, she cried out in labour and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his head.
All right. So there's a lot of symbolism in this passage. Sometimes people might be tempted to think, well, the woman, she's giving birth to the child. If the child is Jesus, well, the woman must be Mary. But in actual fact, we see that it says it's obviously a symbol. The woman is a symbol just like the other symbols. She's clothed with the sun. She's got the moon under her feet. She's got a garland of 12 stars. This is representing the people of God as opposed to a single individual woman.
Yeah.
And we actually see echoes of this all the way back to the book of Genesis. In Genesis chapter 3, God says that the seed of the woman would crush the serpent's head. And so in that passage in in Genesis chapter 3, I think it's verse 15, it's the first messianic prophecy, that the seed of the woman would come and crush the serpent's head. And so there you have the woman, the seed, which is the child, and the serpent, which we're going to find out the dragon is also called the serpent.
Yes.
So in other words, this story is older than just the story of the birth of Jesus. This goes right back to the great controversy between Christ and Satan and that promise in the garden that there would be a Messiah, and that Messiah was Jesus. I'm going to read verses 4, 5, and 6, but I'll probably do that after we come back, John.
Yeah.
And we're going to see how this plays out, because this Revelation 12 is like a broad sweep of the great controversy between Christ and Satan. So we'll come back after the break.
We will indeed. You're listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM, and we've got a track here by Cody Johnson, I Can't Even Walk Without You Holding My Hand. And also don't forget our text line, 0488 880 831.
I thought number one would surely be me. I thought I could be what I wanted to be. I thought I could build on life's sinking sand, but now I can't even walk without you holding my hand. I thought I could do a lot on my own. I thought I could make it all alone. I thought of myself as a mighty big man, but Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Oh Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. The mountain's too high and the valley's too wide. Down on my knees, that's where I learned to stand. Oh Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. I think I'll make Jesus my all and all, and if I'm in trouble, on His name I'll call. If I didn't trust Him, I'd be less of a man, 'cause Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Oh Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. The mountain's too high and the valley's too wide. Down on my knees, that's where I learned to stand. 'Cause Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Oh Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand.
Powerful song there by Cody Johnson. A very humbling title, actually. I can't even walk without you holding my hand. Very powerful
Very
song.
poignant.
And yeah, very poignant indeed. Listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. I'm John Weeks. Peter Watts is in front of me. And while the track was playing, he's playing his air banjo guitar, and now he's serious. So we're going to talk.
Now I'm saying, don't say that, John. Don't say that.
So the track, what we're talking about is what on earth happened. So we were dealing with Revelation chapter 12. I read the first 3 verses, and you're going to read them.
Yeah. So you'll notice there in verse 2 it says, being with child, this woman, she cried out in labour to give, in pain to give birth, and another sign appeared in heaven, behold, a fire and a great dragon. It says verse 4, this is Revelation 12:4, his tail threw a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. Some people may know a lot of people know the Bethlehem Jesus was born Christmas story. But what they may not know is after Jesus was born, King Herod was very suspicious of this new child that was to be born King of the Jews, as the wise men had described him. And he sought then to destroy the child. And so he sent his soldiers in to destroy all the children in Bethlehem 2 years and under, because he wanted to make sure that he got the Christ child. But Mary and Joseph were warned in a dream to flee, and they did. They took Jesus and took him to Egypt, and so he survived. But this is what this is referring to. So the dragon represents the devil, and the devil working through Herod and those soldiers to try and destroy the child as soon as it was born. Verse 5 of Revelation 12, it says, "She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and to his throne." So clearly this child is Jesus. There is a reference in Revelation chapter 19 that describes Jesus coming on a white horse. He's called the Word of God. He's called King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and it says he will rule all nations with a rod of iron. This is definitely Jesus. And, of course, her child, it says, was caught up to God and to his throne. And, of course, that's where Jesus went when he ascended after his ministry. And then in verse 6, Revelation 12:6, it says, "Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God that they should feed her there 1,260 days." Now, this is talking about after Jesus had gone to heaven, ascended to heaven. Sometime after that, this woman would flee into the wilderness, and she would be prepared there, and that she would be fed there in the wilderness 1,260 days. This time period we've looked at before, John. We've looked at it in Daniel chapter 7, and there it came in the terms of time times and a half a time, and it represents the 1,260 years when God's true church was in the wilderness. It was persecuted. The medieval church dominated the landscape, and we would say that this period was from 538 to 1798, when the papal system dominated the world in terms of Christianity. And those that had access to the scriptures and wanted to practice a biblical form of Christianity had to go into the wilderness. They had to go into hiding many times because they would be hunted down and persecuted. Because they weren't towing the line, as it were, with the state church. What's interesting about this is this passage of the woman in the wilderness for a period of time where, God cares for her. That's repeated again later in the passage. If we jump down to Revelation 12 and verse, let's say 13, we'll read 13 on through to the end.
Okay. Now then, when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted a woman and gave birth to
Who gave birth
to the male, obviously child. But the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her face, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the presence of the serpent.
Let's pause there. So here we've got the woman going again into the wilderness. She's nourished. In the other passage, it said that she was fed by God. And it says 1,260 days in the first passage. Here it says times and a half time. This is the same time period. We see it 7 different times in prophetic language in Daniel and the Revelation. 7 different times this time period is given. So clearly God wants us to understand it. It's written in 3 different ways: 1,260 days, a time, times and a half a time, and 42 months is another way it's written in the book of Revelation. And so this is the same time period. And so it's just telling us that during that medieval period when the church and the state were united, and the church used the state to enforce its beliefs and practices on the people, even though many of those beliefs and practices were not biblical. And it would use the state to enforce them, and indeed the church was persecuted. And what happens then is, at the end of that period in 1798, and we've talked about this when we looked at Daniel chapter 7, is Napoleon is wanting to conquer Europe. He knows that he cannot conquer Europe unless he deals with the papacy, because it had a lot of influence. And so he sends his general into Rome to arrest the Pope. And he does that in 1798. thus bringing the 1,260-year prophecy to an end and bringing a temporary end, delivering a deadly wound to the papacy, but bringing a temporary end to that. The importance of this, John, is that Protestants in Europe, Protestants in the United States at this time, remember, the United States is a very, young country at this point in time.
Yep.
Declaration of Independence was only 1776. In 1798, Protestants in Europe and Protestants in the United States see this event of the taking captive of the papacy and effectively receiving that deadly wound, bringing the 1,200 days prophecy to an 260 days prophecy to an end. They saw this as a fulfillment of prophecy. And so you have them starting to look more carefully now at prophecy because of that event. So, for instance, if we will look at the publishing industry and the publishing of literature around this time, if you were to look before 1798 at the number of books that were published by Christians about Daniel and Revelation and their prophecies, very few books being published about at that time, before 1798. Very few on Daniel and Revelation. These books were confusing to people. There wasn't a lot published.
Yep.
But when 1798 occurs, after that time, you have an explosion in books that are being written about the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation.
So people were hunger for the knowledge.
They had woken up. They'd seen this as a fulfillment of prophecy. They wanted to know more. They want to explore these books more. They want to understand the prophecies more. And that, of course, led them to a study of the book of Daniel and the 1,260 days prophecy that had just come to an end was there depicted for them in Daniel chapter 7. But many eyes started to drift towards Daniel chapter 8 and the 2,300 days prophecy that we've already explored in a previous episode of this series.
Yep.
And they wanted to know, when does this 2,300 days begin and end?
Yep.
And they started to study that. And so many scholars now, after 1798, are focusing. These are scholars from different denominations: Roman Catholic, Anglican, Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, all kinds of different denominations. Christians starting to study prophecy and these particular books, Daniel and Revelation. Well, one person who had a very sort of loose relationship with Christianity, was not really a believer, was William Miller, and then he became a believer. He went through an experience where he started to believe that Jesus was real and the Bible was real, and he started to study the book. And he, too, started to study about this 2,300 days prophecy in Daniel chapter 8:14. And he actually began studying the Bible from verse 1 all the way through to this point, and he would only proceed as far as his understanding took him. If he didn't understand, well, he'd work it all out and then he'd move on. Well, he got to this point and he studied the 2,300 days prophecy for 13 years.
Wow.
That's a long time. And we're going to discover what he discovered after the break.
We do have a music break, and the music's by John Bowman, a track called Tired of Sin. And don't forget our text line 0488 880 831.
When the prodigal son returned home again, with no shoes on his feet, all battered by sin, his father looked down that long dusty road, and he brought him a ring and the very best robe. So go kill the calf. His father then said, there's plenty to eat, the table is spread. My son who was lost is back home again, for he has has grown tired of living in sin. I'll say to my Father, I'm not worthy, you see, but if you let me come home, I'd be a servant for thee. I've lost all I have, Lord, I'm hungry and cold. And he said, my son, welcome back to the fold. So go kill the calf. His father then said, there's plenty to eat. The table is spread. My son who was lost is back home again, for he has grown tired of living in sin. Yes, he has grown tired of living in sin.
Oh, once again, a good track there. You're listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. We've got a question we're going to ask you in respect of the show. Have you ever had a disappointment in your life and it turned out to be a blessing? We'd love to get some feedback on that. And just a simple question, but you may have a story in your life you just want to quickly share with us. And you can do that by texting us on 0488 880 831. Let me repeat that number, 0488 880 831. And you can even use this text line for any question, comment, whatever. We'll respond. I've got the screen in front of me, so I'll keep checking throughout the show, whatever messages come through.
We at the end of this segment, John, too, well, we've got a book offer too. So stay tuned, because there is a book offer that we would like to send you.
Yep.
And if you would like to get that, stay tuned and we'll work out how you can do that.
And the topic today, what on earth happened?
What on earth happened? So we are studying the sanctuary under investigation. This is our final episode. What on earth happened? What is happening on earth? And we talked about the fact that after 1798, that people started studying the books of Daniel and Revelation. They particularly were focused on Daniel 8:14, which says this: for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And that was in response to a question that was asked, how long will the vision be? And we've talked about that. We have an whole episode on that. So go back in the series and check that out. We did a whole series, a whole episode on Daniel chapter 8. So we're not going to repeat all of that. But Daniel chapter 8:14 was being examined by many Christian scholars from many different denominations. One person that was studying this passage was a Baptist farmer. His name was William Miller. And he had been a deist and had been very skeptical and had made a mockery of Christians. But then he, through, I think it was the American War of Independence, he realized that God's hand must have been helping him to survive, and he became a believer and he started studying the Bible, and he came to Daniel 8:14, and he didn't know what it meant, and he was trying to work out, what is it, the 2,300 days? He rightly concluded that these must be 2,300 years. Go back to that message called How Long Will the Vision Be, to work out that. Please go back and listen to that. But he recognized that they were 2,300 years, and he wondered when they began. He knew they began in the Persian period, and he started to do calculations. But he studied this passage for 13 years. and he wanted to understand it. He came to the conclusion that based on the time prophecy, he believed that Jesus would return to earth in 1843. He worked on the time period and he concluded that it would end in the middle of the 1800s. And there were a number of people who were saying that Jesus was going to come back in the 1800s. But he concluded it would be 1843, and he thought the cleansing of the sanctuary, what was that, John? And he thought, well, maybe the sanctuary is this earth, and the cleansing is going to be by fire when Jesus comes, so it's the second coming. That was his conclusion. He was wrong about the event, but he was right about the timing, generally speaking. And he was started to share. Now, he was very reluctant to share. He did private study, and he thought, well, he was not a preacher. He's a Baptist farmer, and he didn't really desire to be a public speaker. And so he became convicted that he should share this message with people. And he was sort of fighting that conviction. He made a deal with God. He made a deal with God and said, Lord, if you send somebody to invite me to speak, then I'll speak about it. And he thought to himself, I'm a man in my 50s. I'm a Baptist farmer. Nobody's going to ask me to preach, so I think that's a fair bet, you know.
Yep.
And then that day, after he made the prayer, somebody came knocking on his door and asked him, said, our preacher's not available this weekend. Could you come?
Oh, that's a God moment.
And William Miller was so annoyed that he'd made this deal with God. He went out into the wood near his house, and he was angry with God, and he said, I don't want to do it. But eventually he gave in. He surrendered to God's will.
Sounds like a Jonah.
He decided to share, and so he started sharing. And a movement began. It was a non-denominational movement. There were people from all different walks and all different faiths coming to all these different branches of Christianity, coming to this idea that Jesus is going to come in the mid-1800s. And 1843 was the year they'd focused on. Eventually, 1843 would come, and it would come to an end, and then they started to coming to 1844, and he thought, well, we need to, what's happened? Maybe he'll come in the spring of 44. I think, first of all, he said it was from the spring of 43 to spring of 44.
Okay.
Then that came and went, and then some other scholars who were part of this Millerite movement that believed Jesus was coming in the mid-1800s, they went back to the scriptures and they discovered that it wasn't 1843, it was 1844. And in fact, it was October 22, 1844.
That's pretty precise.
Because we're talking here about, last week we talked about the Day of Atonement. And that's a Jewish national holiday every year called Yom Kippur. And back in 1844, they worked out that Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, that they believed was what Jesus was doing in this heavenly sanctuary situation. But anyway, they believed it came on October 22, 1844. So they were prepared and they went out looking for Jesus, and they said, he'll come at midnight. The day was seeping out, the sun was setting, and they thought, he hasn't come yet. And somebody said, he's going to come at midnight. The Bible says he'll come at midnight. And so they waited till midnight, and they waited all through the night, looking for Jesus' return on October 22, 1844. That seeped into October 23. The sun began to rise, and they recognized that he wasn't coming. And they were bitterly disappointed. I mean, some of these people had spent years of their life preparing for Jesus to really come in 1844. And when he didn't come, they were devastated. And what could they do? Some people had sold land to get advertising money to tell people Jesus is coming. Other people had left crops in the field. They hadn't harvested them because Jesus is coming. We don't need to harvest. And so all sorts of different stories were told about those who were preparing. And you can imagine those who were mocking them.
Would have taken advantage of that.
Those who were mocking them on this side of October 22, but then when the other side of October 20, it must have been very embarrassing for them. Anyway, two of these people, so Jesus did not return in 1844, and they experienced a great disappointment. The Millerites were devastated. There was a man by the name of Hiram Edson. He was one of those who believed Jesus would come. He'd experienced the greatest morning. He and other believers, the next morning, they met for prayer at Edson's barn in Port Gibson, New York, in the United States, in the northeast of the United States. After their prayer meeting, Edson walked across his cornfield, and suddenly it seemed to Edson that God was opening a view of heaven to him in his mind, you know. And he could see that Jesus had begun a final ministry in the heavenly sanctuary at the end of the 2,300 days. That's why it says 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. And Hiram Edson and his friend O.R.L. Crozier, I think was a school teacher, they began sharing this message, and they wrote this message out and began sharing it. And this gave hope to those who had believed something was going to happen at the end of the 2,300 days.
Yeah.
And that group eventually became what today is the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And it didn't have that name at that time, and they hadn't even discovered the Sabbath at that time, but they became the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And this this great disappointment that they experienced was prophesied in the Bible. We'll come to that in a moment. But the point is, William Miller got the timing right. 1844 is the right time for the end of the 2,300 days prophecy.
Yep.
He got the event wrong. The cleansing of the sanctuary is not Jesus' return by fire at the end of the world. It is the cleansing of the sanctuary, the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary, which we spoke about briefly last week. And so when they started to understand it, went back to the Bible. This was a multi-denominational group. They went back to the Bible and started to study. And there were people, people from all different kinds of Christian backgrounds. They said, let's lay aside everything. Let's study the Bible, and we will believe and practice what the Bible teaches. And they formed a church. In the end, they formed a movement which became a church. I want to say that, again, I've mentioned before, this disappointment, the great disappointment, actually is prophesied in the Bible. So let's have a look at that. Let's turn to Daniel chapter 12. If you've got your Bible, you might want to turn there with us. Daniel chapter 12. And I'd like to read verses 4 to 9, John. And so maybe if you read 4, 5, and 6,
Okay.
I'll do 7, 8, and 9.
All right. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. And many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there stood two others, one on this riverbank and the other on that riverbank. And one said to the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be?
All right. So just bear in mind, we've got a question there. How long?
Yeah.
This is verse 7. No, where am I up to?
7.
Thanks. This is verse 7. Then I heard the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the river when he held up his hand, his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever that it shall be for a time, times, and half a time. And when the power of the holy people is completely shattered, all these things shall be finished. So the question comes, how long shall the fulfillment of these wonders be? And the time period given is the time, times, and a half a time. So in other words, the time of the end, Daniel is told to seal up the book, seal up the words and close the book until the time of the end. And the time period given is the time, times, and a half a time. So that means that this 1798, when these 1,260 days, or the time, times, and a half a time came to an end, that's the beginning of the time of the end. Yeah. And he says, although I heard, this is verse 8, although I heard, I did not understand. Then I said, my Lord, what will be the end of these things? And he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore that a bit when we come back after the next break.
Indeed we do. We got a band called Gospel Creek and the Bluegrass Band, and a track called Create in Me. Don't forget our text line 0488 880 831. Love to get your text messages.
Create in
a clean heart, O God, and renew the right spirit within me. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew the right spirit within me. Cast me not away from thy presence, O Lord, and take not thy Holy Spirit from me. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from thy presence, O Lord, and take not thy Holy Spirit from me. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. And renew a right spirit within me.
Yes, you're listening to A Light in the Dark on Faith FM. I'm John Weeks, and we have Peter Watts opposite me. And we got a book offer. It's a magazine type book. It's called The Divine Design. It's a magazine type book that talks about the heavenly sanctuary. And if you would like a copy, a free copy, no obligation, it's a special free offer, text us on 0488 880 831. You have to put the code in so our team can then act on it. So the code is in ALD89. Okay, ALD obviously represents a light in the dark. So yeah. ALD89. Also, the question we're asking, and the question is, have you experienced a disappointment, but it turned out to be a blessing? Love to get a bit of feedback on that. That'd be kind of nice. So again, that same text number, 0488 880 831. Peter.
All right. Well, this is our last segment, John, of the last episode in this series, and we're talking about what on earth happened at the sanctuary under investigation. And we noted that the book of Daniel had also referred to this time period, the times and a half of time, which came to an end in 1798. And then we have, it's interesting because it says, when will all these things be wrapped up? When will the book be unsealed, as it were? And we're going to go to Revelation chapter 10, because I believe that this great disappointment that was experienced was actually prophesied in Scripture. And so we're in Revelation chapter 10, and we're going to read through the first 7 verses. If you want to read the first 3, I'll read the next 4.
Sure.
Revelation 10.
Yeah, I got it here now. Okay, verse 1. I saw still another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. He had a little book opened in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land, and cried with a loud voice. And when a lion roars...
As when a lion roars.
Oh, as when a lion roars, thank you. When he cried out, 7 thunders uttered their voices.
Okay.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It is. So
Yeah.
verse 2 there, it says he had a little book open in his hand.
A little book.
So this is interesting. In Daniel, he's told to seal up
Seal
the book. Okay, close up the book, seal up the book, close up the book until the time of the end.
Yep.
Daniel is the only book in the Bible that is sealed and closed up. No other book it says that about it. Revelation is the only book in the Bible it says, blessed are you if you read this book. And then you have a vision here of this angel with a little book open in his hand. So the book of Daniel was told to be shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Here we are. Revelation is foreshadowing the time of the end, and this book is going to be open. Okay, so the book that he carries in his hand here is the book of Daniel. And we're going to see that as we go on. I'm reading now on from Revelation 10, verse 4 onwards.
Yep.
It says, when the seven thunders were uttered their voices, I was about to write. This is John talking. John's writing the book of Revelation. I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, seal up the things that the seven thunders have uttered, and do not write them. The angel whom I saw standing in the sea and on the land raised his hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever. Now, I want to just pause here, John, because that's the same language that's being used by the being back in Daniel chapter 12. He raises his hand to heaven, he swears by him who lives forever.
Yes.
Right? Same situation. Swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and earth, who created heaven and the things that are in it, the earth and the things that are in it, and the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be delay no longer. So this is his message. It's an end time message. We noticed that this messenger was saying it was going to be to the time of the end. This is an end time message. He's saying there should be delay no longer. One translation of this, John, says there should be time no longer. The word is chronos, I think, there in the Greek.
That would be right.
So in verse 7 then it says, but in the days of the sounding of the seventh angel, when he is about to sound, the mystery of God would be finished as he had declared to his servants the prophets. Verse 8, then the voice which I heard from heaven spoke to me again and said, go, take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel who stands on the sea and on the earth. So I went to the angel and said to him, give me the little book. He said to me, take and eat it, and it will make your stomach bitter, but it will be as sweet as honey in your mouth. Then I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it, and it was as sweet as honey in my mouth. But when I had eaten it, my stomach became bitter. This little book, if this is the book of Daniel, as we believe, then people were devouring the prophecies of that book back in the time of William Miller, and they looked at that prophecy of the end of the 2,300 days, and it was sweet as honey in their mouth. But when it had been digested and when the time came, it became bitter in their stomach, and that was their great disappointment. This is describing the experience of their great disappointment. Very interesting, because it's all happening after 1798, after the time of the end.
Yep.
And what's interesting, John, is at the end of Revelation chapter 10, verse 11, after this great disappointment, sweet in the mouth, bitter in the belly, this book, it says, and he said to me, you must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings. You must prophesy again. Prophesy what, John? What is it that they were to prophesy? If you go back to the message of this angelic being who raises his hand to heaven, says that there should be time no longer. There should be delay no longer. In other words, it's coming to an end.
Yep.
They were prophesying that time was coming to an end. Jesus was coming. That's what they were prophesying in the 1840s.
Yep.
That was their message. But they experienced that great disappointment because Jesus began his final ministry in the heavenly sanctuary. The sanctuary was being cleansed. But they were told, you must prophesy again. What were they to prophesy? That time is running out. Jesus is coming. That is the message of God's people, to prophesy once again that time is running out, that Jesus is coming soon. And that is the message that God's people are taking to the world today. Now, some people will say, John, how can we believe that God was leading a movement that went through the Great Disappointment? In other words, how could you believe that God was leading a movement that came to the wrong conclusions? That, in other words, made the mistake of believing something and then they were disappointed. How could God be in that movement? Well, I would like to remind people of Luke chapter 24 and the story of two of Jesus' disciples on the road to Emmaus. Because in that chapter, you have these two disciples. This takes place on the Sunday. This is the Resurrection Sunday. Jesus died on the cross on Friday. His followers have scattered. They are devastated. He has died on the cross. He's not just been arrested. He's not just been tried. He's not just been punished. He's not just been tortured. He's now been put on the cross, crucified, and he has died. And they've taken his body down and they've placed it in a tomb. And they are devastated, John. They are experiencing the great disappointment. The one they followed for 3.5 years, the one who fed the sick. Fed the sick. He healed the sick. He fed the hungry.
Yep.
You know, he could feed the 5,000. He could heal the sick. He could forgive sinners. He was full of grace and truth, and he could even raise the dead. They'd seen him do these things, and they said, this must be the Messiah.
The miracles.
And then he had gone to the cross and died, and his disciples scattered. They were afraid for their own lives. They didn't want to be arrested by the Romans. And so Jesus has now risen on Sunday morning. Mary Magdalene has been the first person to see Jesus alive after the resurrection. And, the women have gone back and told the disciples. They've come, a couple of the disciples have ran to the tomb. It's empty, but they don't see Jesus. And so there's these rumors, where's Jesus, And we read here in Luke 24, verse 13, I'm going to pick it up at John. It says, now, behold, two of them, that's two of his disciples, two of them were travelling that same day to a village called Emmaus, which was 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they talked together of all these things which had happened over that weekend. So it was while they conversed and reasoned that Jesus himself drew near and went with them. Can you imagine? But their eyes were restrained so that they did not know him. Jesus walks up to be walking with them, and they don't even know it's Jesus. Their eyes were restrained. And he said to them, what kind of conversation is this that you have with one another as you walk and are sad? Then one of those whose name was Cleopas answered and said to him, are you the only stranger in Jerusalem? Have you not known the things which have happened there in these days? Like, don't you know what's going on?
Yep.
And I love this because it's so funny when you read it in verse 19. And Jesus says to them, what things? I mean, it's only the most pivotal point in the history of the world, What things? And they said to him, the things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we were hoping that it was him who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, beside all this, today is the 3rd day since these happened. Yes, and certain women of our company who arrived at the tomb early astonished us. When they did not find his body, they came saying that he had also seen a vision of angels who has said he was alive, and so forth. So they're talking about this. And then Jesus begins. You can read the rest of the passage in Luke 24. Yep. But Jesus begins a Bible study where he reveals these things must take place. And then he reveals himself to them. And they run back to Jerusalem to tell the others. But I want you to notice a few things about the comparison between what happened to the people at the Great Disappointment in 1844 and what happened with this great disappointment of Cleopas and his friend. First of all, Jesus had done something very important. The disciples were not expecting it. The disciples were unaware of it. They had experienced a great disappointment. There were two of them walking, confused and concerned, Hiram Edson and his friend, Cleopas and his friend. One is named, the other is unnamed, which is interesting.
Yep.
Jesus helped them through studying the Old Testament. Jesus took Cleopas and his friend back to the Old Testament to show them prophecies about the Messiah. Again, Edson and his friend, they were helped by going back to the Old Testament book of Daniel and understanding the sanctuary being cleansed. Jesus was revealed to them in a new and different way, and they rejoiced and they wanted to tell the world. And out of both of those disappointments came mighty movements that went around the globe, the Christian faith and the Great Advent movement. And so today, John, our role as Christians is to rejoice that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, walked the streets of Jerusalem, went to the cross to die for our sins, is mediating in heaven on our behalf, but he is soon to return in glory. And we must prophesy again that time should be no more. Jesus is coming soon.
Indeed.
Get ready to meet him.
Oh, what a day that will be.
What a day that will
That'll
be.
be him. That's today's program of A Light in the Dark. And with Peter Watson, I'm John Weeks, your host. And look, thank you for Jenny for taking up the book offer. But in the meantime, God bless. Take care. Bye.